Hi, I'm Thoro Shah. I'm a nutritional scientist, integrative oncology practitioner, and hugely passionate about nutrition and lifestyle when it comes to reducing the risk of cancer and cancer reoccurrence. I'm also passionate about health inequalities in cancer. Unfortunately, South Asian Black people have much poorer outcomes in all types of cancer in the UK and the US. So I'm very passionate about addressing these. Today, we'll be talking about the nutrition and lifestyle changes you can make to reduce your risk of cancer. I hope you enjoy the talk. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today to this Nutrition and Lifestyle Cancer Masterclass in conjunction with the iPrehab study, University of Cardiff, and that's been funded by the NIHR. And I'm really happy to share this information for our South Asian community and really tailor it, because we don't often have information that's tailored to our South Asian community. So that's why it's really, really important. Rates of cancer are increasing, and I will share more about that in a second. Whoops. So if you don't know me, I'm Thorol. I'm a nutritional scientist, functional medicine practitioner, and the founder of the Urban Kitchen. I also specialize in optimizing health and disease and reducing the risk of cancer. I'm also the co-founder of South Asian Supernovas. That is a not-for-profit strict charity where we're looking to improve the outcomes of breast cancer in South Asians. And there's another Thorol Gathani, who's far more intelligent than me, who's actually doing some really amazing research at Cancer Research UK. And she's showed that since 2005, the rates of breast cancer have increased massively in the South Asian community. We're not talking just about breast cancer today, we could talk about all cancers, but because breast cancer is one of the most common cancers, it's sometimes really useful when we're looking at kind of trends in cancer to understand how things are developing in our communities. And breast cancer is one of those things that's actually increasing. And that's because our lifestyles are changing, our food is changing, the stress, everything we're exposed to. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those things. I'm really passionate about combating the lack of diversity in healthcare and making sure that we have culturally appropriate and culturally relevant information so that ethnic minorities and marginalized groups are actually having better outcomes in cancer, because at the moment they're much, much poorer than the white population. And last week, I was actually at Parliament talking about this with the Labour Party, because we don't currently have a cancer plan in the UK. So if we don't have a cancer plan, then we can't improve things for all the people that currently have poorer outcomes. So that's really, really important. So that's why this project with iPrehab, and Muncie's going to share a little bit more about the project at the end of my presentation, is really important. That's why we're really keen for all of you to join us in the research. So all of these photos are mostly my photos, so I'll explain the photos as we go along too. So we know that cancer is really common. And actually, at this point in time, 1 in 2 people in the UK will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetimes. When we had the last census in 2021, at least 9 or 10% of the population is Asian, of which at least 7% of our UK population is South Asian. We're the biggest ethnic minority, yet very rarely are campaigns tailored to us, despite us being the biggest group that work in healthcare. So I find that really fascinating. And the reason I just want to share this slide is that we always thought that as South Asians, cancer didn't happen to us. And now it's happening more and more and more. And it is affecting all of us. So it's just really important for us to understand that we are all at risk, and there are lots of things that we can do to reduce our risk. And if we are faced with cancer, there's lots of things we can help us through our treatment, but also to reduce our risk of reoccurrence. And if you see this Macmillan sheet, you'll see that in 2020, which was actually now 4 years ago, only 3 million people were thought to be living with cancer in the UK. By 2030, which is 6 years away, that's going up to 4 million. So that's quite an exponential growth of 1 million people within 10 years. And the same again in 2040. So more and more people are being diagnosed with cancer each year. So what is cancer? I just thought it'd be really good to have a little refresh of what cancer is, so we know what it is and what increases its risk. So cancer is essentially uncontrolled cell growth. It's not one disease, it's 200 or so different diseases that can impact lots of different cells in our body. And these cells grow out of control. We normally have really important systems and control systems within our cells and in our bodies to catch these cells that are growing out of control. But when cancer actually occurs, our immune system, which is a bit like a CCTV camera system, is not working very well. And so those cells grow out of control and they're not able to catch them. And there are things that we can do that affect our risk. Some of them we can change, and some of them we can't change. So when we think about non-modifiable risk, the things we can't change, like our age, our gender, as we get older, we're more likely to have cancer. Gender, certain cancers, affect women more, certain cancers affect men more. Viruses and bacteria, for example, HPV, we know that that's causing cervical cancer, and also family history of cancer. But there are lots of things which can impact our risk, which we can change. And we're going to talk a lot about some of these. So there's things like physical inactivity. If you don't exercise much, that increases your risk of cancer. If we have a poor diet, including one that's high in saturated fat and sugar, and I'll talk more about the nuances of that a little bit later on. A low fiber diet, exposure to the sun, obesity and weight. That's one of the ones that actually quite a few cancers are linked to that. Not all cancers, but some cancers. Alcohol consumption and smoking. And traditionally, in our South Asian community, we didn't smoke, we didn't have alcohol, we had children young, we breastfed, we weren't necessarily exposed to sun. So all of these things have changed over the last few decades. So diet and lifestyle, the key to cancer prevention. What we know now is from the World Health Organization and the World Cancer Research Fund is that approximately 40% of cancers can be prevented by making these changes. And if you look at this little diagram, this was done by this phenomenal research that was done in 2018. And the circles correspond to the size of, they correspond to how important they are to reduce your risk of cancer. So the top thing you can do to reduce your risk of any cancer is to not smoke. So that's one really important, or consume tobacco products. In our South Asian community, we often chew tobacco, and means we often have a high rate of oral cancers, which I think a lot of people don't talk about, but that's quite important. Keeping to a healthy weight, so obesity and being overweight is linked to some cancers. There are 13 different cancers, not all cancers though. So keeping healthy weight, we know that's not only important for cancer, but heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes, which is really rife in our South Asian community. Being safe in the sun, avoiding certain substances at work, that's like things like asbestos. So if you're in a job where you're exposed to those things, they can actually impact your cancer risk. Drinking alcohol. And as we go down, they get smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's how much of an impact they have on whether we have cancer. So there are things like avoiding unnecessary radiation, cutting down on processed meat. We know that there's a link between kind of processed meat and colon cancer, avoiding air pollution. Now that one I'm not going to talk about today, but it's something I'm actually very passionate about, pollution and our environment and toxins. We don't have much time today. Breastfeeding if possible, being more active, and then minimizing HRT. And I don't agree with that, minimizing HRT, and actually that data has actually been shown to be wrong. So these are all things that we could be doing. The other things that we not included in that was protection against infections such as HPV, HIV, hepatitis. All of those can cause certain types of cancers too. And then attaining these physical activity levels. I'm going to talk more about that later on in the talk. So we have talked about them. There are 6 areas which I think are really important, which we all consider are the lifestyle pillars of lifestyle medicine. And they include healthy diet, physical activity or exercise, managing our stress, our relationships, sleep, and avoiding substances. Today, I'm going to talk about healthy eating, exercise. I'm going to touch a little bit on sleep and stress. I don't have time to talk about everything in detail, but I'm really happy that I can touch on some of these things. So we know that cancer and nutrition, something for a long time that we didn't know how it was linked, but now we know that it's approximately 35% of cancers have a link to their diet. That doesn't mean that if you've had cancer, you've eaten badly and you've done anything wrong. You absolutely haven't. It's just that we know generally there is a link. So if you look at this diagram, it's got lots of different cancers there. So on the left-hand side, it's got all cancers and breast cancer. On the right-hand, my right, it's got gastric cancer, colorectal cancer, and prostate cancer. So when you look at all cancers, we know that having a healthy lifestyle decreases the risk by 30%. Now, having a westernized diet, and there's also forms of the westernized diet in the South Asian diet, which I will talk about later, that increases your risk of all cancers by 200%. Tomato products, so just tomato sauces, tomato in cooking, tomato food, that actually reduces the risk of gastric cancer, but actually reduces the risk of prostate cancer too, and it doesn't show, it's not shown on this one. The next three things are linked to breast cancer. Lots of information I could share on breast cancer. I actually specialize in breast cancer in particular, but in this instance, natural soy foods, if you eat those, particularly at teenage through menarche, when you start your period, it can reduce your risk of breast cancer. Carotenoid vegetables, those are all those lovely orange and yellow things, like our lovely Kesa mangoes, which are in season right now. They are carotenoid fruits, but we want to look at those carotenoid vegetables, so pumpkins and sweet potato and carrots, and having a high intake of fruit can reduce your risk of breast cancer by 11%. These cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, the cauliflowers, all of those sorts of things like rocket, they can reduce your risk of colorectal cancer. Eating meat, red meat, increases your risks, same with processed meat. And I think that's interesting, that data, because it's quite mixed. And then drinking 2 to 3 glasses of alcohol can increase your risk. For prostate cancer, all of these things increase your risk. Some of them are really mixed because the same things can reduce the risk for breast cancer. So it's something we need to understand more, but having calcium supplements and dairy can for prostate cancer. What we know that is having a low fiber intake can increase our risk of many cancers because it affects our gut microbiome. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. If we have foods which are quite nutrient sparse, so things which are just don't have many nutrients in them. So if we're having white flour, white rice, all of those sorts of refined flour products, all that nasto, all of that kind of in stuff, snacky foods, that can impact our glucose metabolism. Now, we as South Asians have a real problem with glucose metabolism, and I don't have time to go into detail, but I will touch on it in a minute. And then having a low fiber, so not having enough fruit and vegetables, that's really going to increase our risk. But what we know is that we can decrease the risk, and the patterns that decrease risk are having the Mediterranean or Japanese diet. So what does that mean for us as South Asians and our food? I will talk to you about that. We also want to have a balanced ratio of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. These are these monounsaturated fats which come in things like fish. And then we have omega-6 fatty acids in plant foods, but traditionally we had a much different ratio. So we would have had 20 times more omega-3 than omega-6. Currently in our modern diets, about 1 to 1. So we want to really sort of have more fish if we eat fish, and if not, then we have algal and vegan supplements of fish oil, well, of omega-3s. There are lots of high levels of fiber, antioxidants in fruit, vegetables, olive oil, and wine. And I'll talk more about all of those. Again, 5 times the amount of cruciferous vegetables. We don't eat that many cruciferous vegetables. I have had one, and I've just made the Dishoom have a broccoli salad. Indian broccoli salad is delicious, and I've just been having that. So there are things that we need to do. We just need to learn to put this into our diet, and then having more unprocessed soy food. So that's things like edamame, fermented soy like tempeh, tofu, all of those sorts of things that can all reduce the risk. I do want to touch on vitamin D because we know that most cases of cancer, people have low vitamin D levels. And vitamin D is not just a vitamin, it's a steroid. It does so many things in our body. It's so important for our immune system, for our hormone functions. It's anti-inflammatory. It helps our bones. And having a deficiency is linked to having cancer. So one of the things that's really impacting our South Asian communities, we don't often get out in the sun. We're often really covered up. We're not there for so many cultural reasons. We don't want to get darker. People who are for different religions covering up, all sorts of different things. We don't get enough vitamin D. As it is in the UK, you can only make vitamin D from March to October. You need to be in the sun really between 10 to 3 to make the vitamin D. So one of the things that would be really important, and actually the government really requested this in the COVID pandemic, is for everyone to supplement with vitamin D supplement, particularly in the winter. But for South Asians, because we have skin of with more melanin, it's harder for us to make the vitamin D. We need more sunshine. So it's a really good idea to supplement. And if you eat dietary source of vitamin D, so that's mushrooms which have been left in the sun, dairy products, and oily fish, and fish generally. So this Mediterranean diet, it's not just a diet, it's a lifestyle. And we've made this Mediterranean diet and lifestyle pyramid for our South Asian people. So if you see at the bottom, my favorite part of this is that people are walking together, people are dancing together, people are eating together. It's so important to be social and to move, exercise. And that's really the basis of the Mediterranean diet, is to keep moving, to spend time with people. It's a very family and friends orientated kind of healthy lifestyle pattern. And then we want to have fruit and vegetables, and we don't have to just eat Mediterranean fruit and vegetables. We can eat all of things. We've got all these lovely bitter goods, Kerala, and all sorts of things in our South Asian kind of shops. We have such wonderful greens. So if we really focus on eating any of those, but not cooking them too much and not using too much oil, our spices, the spices are full of antioxidants called polyphenols. And we're so lucky because we get to include all of these in our food. We regularly have, garlic, ginger, turmeric, haldi, all of these things like cumin, mustard seeds, all of this is in our food every single day. And these are full of polyphenols, and which are really powerful antioxidants. We also use a lot of herbs like coriander, dhania, mint. So we want to make sure we're adding those kind of things to all food. A, it gives lots of flavor, but B, it also adds lots and lots of nutrition, which people forget about. And then when it comes to whole grains, rather than having the kind of chapati flour that's like white, we want to kind of really look for the whole grains. We want to have brown or wild rice. We want to continue with those things that we used to have in South Asia, like millet and sorghum and tapioca. And there's so many recipes that we traditionally have, and we should really be continuing that rather than having the processed white flours and the white rice and things like that. Cooking, we try to want to use olive oil. Olive oil has got a source of omega-3s too, so that's much better. You don't need to use extra virgin, just get plain olive oil. That is better for us than seed oils, which has got a lot more omega-6, so they'll help with your balance. We're so lucky because, again, our food traditionally has so many beans and legumes and nuts and seeds. These are all full of not just protein, but lots of fiber too. So really important plant foods. And then if you do eat fish and seafood, that's like just, again, very, very nutritious. And then at the top, you'll see we've got the poultry, the eggs, cheese, and yogurt. We do traditionally eat cheese and yogurt. And I'm actually going to show us how we can adapt our diet to different vegetables and foods in the next few slides. And yogurt and things like that. So at the very, very top, we've got meat and sweets. So we want to eat them not that often. We only want to have them once a week. You'll see with the poultry, eggs, yogurt, paneer, buttermilk, we want to eat them moderately, daily to weekly. With the seafood and fish, the healthy flats, which are the nuts and the seeds and things, we want to eat frequently, 2 or 3 times a week. Vegetable, fruits, legumes, beans, spices, whole grains, we want to base our meals around those. So that's how we can, the Mediterranean diet lifestyle pattern can be adapted to our South Asian lifestyle. So again, eating the rainbow, fiber, all these lovely fruit and vegetables. We've had the last month where we didn't have very much fruit and vegetables because it's what's called the hunger gap in the UK. The hunger gap is when all the kind of wintry vegetables are kind of at the end of the season and the weather's not quite good enough, as particularly this year, for some of the spring things to come into season in the UK. But nevertheless, we live in a country where everything's very available, and eating a wide variety. And one of the things that I've noticed, and it's something that's talked about generally, is most people, whatever their culture, eat the same fruits and vegetables every time. So what we really want to do is have more diversity. So buy something new each time, try something different. If you buy only red peppers, try yellow peppers. If you only buy normal spinach, try arrowhead spinach. Try different things and try to go to your local markets, because there'll be so much more variety, and it's often cheaper too. And it's mostly in season. Now, our South Asian population, we're having so much change to our diet. We used to have this really high fiber traditional diet, and now we're having this calorie dense diet. So if you think about all the Indian snacks and the sweets, and these have become commonplace in our diet and our homes, and actually before they were treats. And so we have to be really careful about what we're having. We're also not having enough protein in our diets too. So that's another thing we need to balance. If we have a high fiber diet, it can decrease the risk of so many diseases, including diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. So we have to help our gut, which is really important. So what is the gut microbiome? People keep talking about this, and I know that sometimes we don't always know what it is. So the gut microbiome is actually all the bacteria, viruses, organisms within our gut and their DNA. Um, and they live within our intestine. And we have a symbiotic relationship with them, which means our bodies house the bacteria and provide it with food while the bacteria help our health. And what do? They do so many things. There are lots of carbohydrates that we can't break down, and the bacteria are able to break these down. They also produce something called short chain fatty acids. Our cells in our gut, the lining, they need these short chain fatty acids to repair our gut lining and to fuel the cells that actually do all the work. They protect us, they're part of our immune system, they train our immune system. A big part of our immune system is based around our gut. They help detoxification, they help with our nervous system. 90% of serotonin, which is the happy hormone, is made in our gut, and the bacteria help to make that. And the more fiber you have, the better. Just as we all have our favorite foods, we have tens of thousands of different bacteria in our gut, and they all have their favorite foods. And most of their favorite foods are fruit and vegetables and plant-based foods. So we really want to feed them their favorite foods so they're happy and they live in balance, just like an ecosystem, the Amazon. And they produce vitamins and minerals for us. We can't make vitamin K. They make vitamin K for us. Just a really quick slide. This looks very, very complicated, but really it's just to show that our diet can affect our immune system and our health through these bacteria and what we call the gut microflora or the gut microbiome. Now, I talked about the immune system being like a CCTV camera system. So the camera's there and it's looking around for cells which are growing out of control. Our gut bacteria and the microbiome actually train those CCTV cameras to work really well. And if we're not feeding the bacteria, they're not able to work well and train. And so we can't then catch the cells and they grow out of control and then become cancer cells. When we have a lack of diversity in the gut microbiome, it's often because we're not eating a very diverse diet or very nutrient dense diet. And that can really increase our risk to cancer, type 2 diabetes, irritable Down syndrome, mood and mental health disorders. This week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and I've just written an article for the Royal Society of Medicine on kind of food and mood. What we know is having the Mediterranean diet pattern or lifestyle is actually can reduce the risk of depression and anxiety in those with moderate to severe depression, anxiety. So just eating better and eating less ultra processed foods can actually help with our mental health and our brain. So what do we do then? How do we use food to improve our health and reduce our risk of disease? So we know that we have to have a diet rich in this variety of vegetables, fruits, herbs, nuts, and seeds. I would say pile half your plate with these non-starchy vegetables. By non-starchy, not potatoes, not sweet potatoes, none of those things, but the other vegetables. I love this plate, which it says aim for 3 or more types and a variety of colors. And I think that's really helpful. If you eat fish, I know many people are vegetarian, eat 2 portions of oily fish. Having these healthy monounsaturated fats at each meal. If you see in this particular plate, things like avocado, nuts, seeds, olive oil, all of these are healthy monounsaturated fats. Palm oil and coconut oil aren't. I know some people like them, but they're not actually. Avoiding red and processed meat, especially grilled and barbecued. We talked about having a vitamin D supplement from October to April. Potentially, you might want to supplement all year round. We want to improve our gut health by having more diversity of plant-based foods, so all of these vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds. But also we want to have fermented food. What is fermented food? Yogurt, that's fermented food. We are so lucky. We have idli and dosa, all of these things are fermented rice foods. Some of the pickles and things, again, fermented. So all of these things are probiotic. They've got the beneficial bacteria in them, which is really helpful for your gut microbiome. You want to limit alcohol consumption. And actually, there's absolutely no safe dose of alcohol. Sadly, drinking any alcohol at all will increase your cancer risk and impact your gut microbiome. So many of us do drink, but I think we want to limit it, never want to drink more than 3 days a week. And we want to make sure that we're actually drinking less than that. We want to reduce free and refined sugar intake. So we don't have foods with added sugar. So you want to be really careful when you're reading labels, if you're buying food, looking for low sugar options. Eating unprocessed soy products. So that's things like miso and tofu, tempeh, edamame. Edamame, you know, it's very high in protein. You can get the edamame beans frozen and makes a really good shack or curry. So I suggest that, you know, that's a really good way of having a nice high protein meal if you want to eat traditional food, and then making sure you drink enough water. So how does this look for our Indian food? So if you look at this vegetarian plate, I've got here lots of different vegetables. So you'll see here we've got things like binda, okra, tutti, which is like a gourd, karela, which is a gourd, different types of aubergines, tomatoes, different limes. We've got our mangoes and our peppers, fenugreek, all of these things. And then things like the sprouted lentils, all the different lentils. Now, lentils have got protein, but they are high in carbohydrates too. But what they are is great. They're full of fiber. They've got lots and lots of fiber. So that's really nutritious. Things like sprouted seeds are also higher in protein too. And then paneer, tofu, eggs, lentils, all of those things. And then from the fermented foods, yogurt, buttermilk, lassi, the pickled vegetables, idlis and dosa are all fermented rice food, so really nutritious. And then you've got things like the millet, chapati, rotli, all of those things, and then different types of rice in different parts of in India. Certainly, they have different kind of rice, so brown, red, all sorts of things. And we want to have these whole grains, the millet, the jowar, the bajra, the ragi, you know, all of those things, barley, brown and red rice, oats, stone ground flour, just to add all that fiber. And in the middle, which the other one did not have, this one I haven't actually put the healthy fats in there, actually, to be fair. We have the spices, the garlic, ginger, chili, turmeric, cumin, all of those different things, cloves, everything. And then we're looking at non-vegetarian version. So the only thing we've added to that is some lean meat and fish, a chicken, oily, you know, and white fish, such as salmon. But other than that, it's very much the same. I wanted to make sure everyone could see that. So comorbidities, what are comorbidities? Our South Asian community have comorbidities, which means they've got other health conditions which can impact our cancer risk and treatment. These things include hypertension, high blood pressure, pulmonary disease, which is lungs disease, and type 2 diabetes. What I find amazing is so many people don't know that having type 2 diabetes increases the risk of breast cancer by up to 27%. And it could explain why some of the rate of, you know, it's increasing so much. As South Asians, we are 6 times more likely to have insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. And that is happening to us at a much smaller, I mean, our BMI doesn't have to be as high. It's because we carry more visceral fat in our stomachs. A lot of this is to do with colonization of India, and the famines that happen, but you know, I'm not going to go into that today. It's endlessly fascinating though. So I just want to go back. And then so these comorbidities, they can impact how cancer is treated. So if you look over here, if you have these different comorbidities and put it together, it just makes it a lot harder for patients. So what we want to do is reduce risk. Prevention is better than cure. So we want to make sure that we have less of things because cancer is increasing. We want the things that we can look after, like the cardiovascular health and the type 2 diabetes, we want to make sure that we're living a lifestyle to reduce risk of those. So exercise. This is me doing a triathlon. You don't need to do a triathlon, but exercise and movement is so important. We know it's good for our heart. But also, did you know that increases the good cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, and reduces the triglycerides in our bloodstream? It improves our mood, our brain chemicals, and self-esteem. There's a beautiful quote where someone just says, if you're feeling grumpy, go for a walk. If you're still feeling grumpy, go for another walk. We know that even 10 minutes of a brisk walk will help our mental health. So that's just really important. The other thing that we think about is traditionally we've eaten and then gone for a walk. We know that going for a walk after eating can reduce your blood glucose. So this is a really great thing for us to go and do, especially now the weather's better and it's lighter in the evenings. Physical activity can improve our muscle strength and endurance, helping with energy. But also, the more muscle mass you have, the more likely you are to survive if you do have cancer. And that's why it's very important for us to do resistance training. helps with better sleep and sex, supports your immune system by this improving regulation. There's all sorts of chemicals that are released when we exercise or move, and that supports our immune system. It also delays aging. We all don't want to age, so the more exercise you do actually delays aging and dysfunction, and we know it reduces the risk of many different cancers. Being sedentary increases the risk of cancer and its recurrence. South Asian women are the most sedentary group in the UK. There's so many reasons for this. It's not our fault. We are being taught to not look after ourselves. We're taught to look after everybody in our family. We're taught to focus on our studies, the clothing, the safety, not mixing men. All of these things impact physical activity, but we do need to move, and walking is not enough, as I'll show you in a minute. So this grandma was based in Bombay, and she started weightlifting in the COVID pandemic. I think it was at the age of 76. So if she can do it, you can do it. And it was really, really important. So we want to make sure people are trying to do something. You don't have to go to a gym, but as you can see, she's doing this in her dining room. So the government, both in the UK and US, recommend at least 150 minutes a week of moderate activity. The US recommends 150 to 300, or 75 minutes of vigorous activity. And vigorous activity is where you're really out of breath and you're sweating. Moderate is where you can just about have a conversation. So something like tennis or jogging or swimming would be moderate, and things like squash or running would be vigorous. We need to all be doing strength training, and most of us are not strength training. Muscle is such an important buffer for our blood glucose, and if you have more muscle, the glucose is used up more quickly by the muscle. So it's very, very important for our bodies to work well, for our glucose regulation if we do have more muscle and we exercise more. What's fascinating, which again, most people don't talk about, is that there's lots of new evidence to show, and that there were some really good papers 5 or 6 years ago that show that South Asians need to take on 230 minutes of moderate exercise a week. This is because we have very poor metabolic health. As I said, we don't have as much muscle. We are very poor with insulin regulation. We have a lot of insulin resistance. So this looks like we have to do 10 to 15 minutes extra on top of the government recommendations as South Asian. So what does that look like? The government recommendation, if we do think about 150 minutes, that's 30 minutes a day. We need to be doing 40 to 45 minutes a day. And that's really important. So we can include walking, can include all the leisure stuff such as golf and dancing and bowling and all of those things. Just try and include activity in your day. The other thing you can do is exercise snacking. These small amounts add up. So if you're working every hour, get up and do some movement for 5 minutes, do some wall presses, do some squats. If you're sitting in a chair, getting up and down from a chair, which is a test I often give if I'm in person with people, that's actually considered a squat, and that will improve your muscle mass. And then when you get stronger, start holding some cans or some bottles. That will help you with your muscles. Now, sleep. Sleep impacts our physical and mental health in so many ways, and a lack of sleep can actually impact our risk of cancer. So when we are sleep deprived, our brain can't work very well. We're more sensitive to pain. We're much more hungry. Our leptin and ghrelin, which are the two hunger and satiety hormones, they don't work as well. So that can lead to you eating more nights that you haven't slept well, and that can lead to being overweight and obesity. Increases the risk of cardiovascular disease. There's loads of studies where they look at people who are shift workers, and they're more likely to have heart attacks or cardiovascular issues, and increases our susceptibility to infection. So if you see here, we've got two different things. We've got the autonomic nervous system and the neuroendocrine system, and all of this has to balance with our sleep and our immune system. The circadian system, that is our body's natural clock. So it's about 24 hours. Some people it's slightly shorter, some people it's slightly longer. You're naturally going to be, some people are naturally in the middle of the day, some people are actually going to be morning people, some people are going to be night owls. So work with your body system if you can. I know not all of us can, especially if you're at school. Teenagers actually need more sleep than ever. And the other thing that's been quite interesting is women need an extra hour's sleep in the second half of their cycle. But how often do we get that sleep? that can impact us. So, and we're not getting enough sleep as it is. The amount of sleep that we used to get in the UK has gone down from average of over 8 hours to, less than 7. So something to think about. But when you're sleep deprived, our immune system doesn't work quite so well. We have these amazing messengers called cytokines, which kind of work with our immune system, and they're kind of immune system messengers, and that it decreases the amount of those, so our immune system doesn't work quite so well and increases the risk of cancer. So our social health and relationships, we're really social, we're animals, and we live in society, particularly in our South Asian culture. We're used to living in multi-generational families. We have really big social networks. We have lots of friends. We have lots of extended family. And actually having strong networks actually has improved our immune health. And as we move to the Western world, we've had our networks have changed and we don't have as much support. And we know that people are often lonely, especially elderly people. Even someone like me, I live on my own. I'm not married. And I can sometimes feel lonely. And, especially when you have stress information, that can weaken the immune system. Now, the blue zones are these areas in the world where people are more likely to be centenarians, meaning they're more likely to live to the over 100. So there's Loma Linda in California. That's actually a Seventh-day Adventist society. It's a religion where they are naturally vegetarian and have a lot of kind of social contact. Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, which is one of my favorite places in the world. Again, they eat a lot of bean-based foods, a lot of family culture. Sardinia, Italy, there's a lot of walking, there are a lot of hills there, a lot of walking up and down, and they kind of eat together and they socialize together. Same with Ikari in Greece, and then Okinawa, which is the island in Japan. They have different food. They're not as rice-based. They eat this kind of sweet potato. So all of these things, so you can see they move naturally. They have a sense of purpose. They have better stress relief. They don't eat till they're full. They eat till they're 80% full. And they have this strong kind of social networks and families and kind of religions as well, and faith. And that has shown that people live till they're 100. Now, in our community, very few people live to 100. So part of it's our poor cardiovascular health. At the same time, there are people that live till later. My nanny, my grandma lived till 98. So what is it that's not, different? I know in South Asian men, cardiovascular health often an issue. So, but that's starting to impact women now too. So mental health, stress, and cancer. This is something that we didn't know much about before, but we know now that having mental health issues and chronic stress, it can suppress our immune system and increase our susceptibility to infection. There was a really interesting paper and some research that came out of the United States and their National Cancer Institute, which looked at how stress can encourage cancer to grow, and stress can include racism. So that's quite interesting when so many of us have immigrated from other countries and we are faced with racism. So we are not in a post-racist society in the UK. And as I was saying last week, I was in Parliament talking to the Labour Party about this. But we know that if you have acute stress, so let's say you're running, you're getting late for an appointment and you're running to get the bus, running to get the tube, running to get the train, that can actually enhance your immune system so you can make it on time. But when you have chronic stress, so say work's really stressful, you're feeling bullied, or you've got too much on your plate, you're caring for someone who's ill, this chronic stress, which goes on for ages, can impact our immune system. So this is stress that happens for several hours a day for weeks or months. So an analogy be, if a tiger was chasing you, then you'd have your adrenaline in your system and it would just get everything working. Whereas this is really like, having a really difficult time in the home or at work where you're feeling chronically stressed all the time. And when the immune systems are suppressed, this immune surveillance system, this CCTV camera system, which I keep talking about, which catches our cancer cells before when they're starting to grow out of control, it doesn't work very well. And so that's why this can increase our risk of cancer. So what can you do? So there are lots of stress releasing activities. Exercise, we've known it can improve our gut microbiome and help reduce stress. I think it's something, if we get moving, we always feel better. Stress activity, so things like meditation, yoga, breath work, all of those things, sound bars can reduce stress, singing, being with friends and family. And then we'll talk a little bit more. All of these things are really about the gut health. So why is it so important? I think it's something that we haven't really thought about as being an important part of our health, but it's not just our physical health, but it's our mental health too. And the stresses can be so many different things. It can be a physical stress, a mental stress, emotional, occupational. And we know that immigration, racism, really can impact us. So there's lots of things we can do. Some of these things are stress reduction. Some of these are protecting you from stress. So when you say establishing clear boundaries and limiting commitments, you don't have to say yes, particularly as South Asian women. We're taught to say yes and look after everyone else first. So learning to say no is so important. And I've learned very much to say no now, and it's wonderful. Meditation, prayer, guided imagery, all of these things can reduce stress. Having calming environments. So in the nighttime, this will also help with your circadian rhythm, your natural body clock. Dim the lights, have candles, have nice smells. All of that can reduce stress. There are nutrients which can help with stress, things like ashwagandha, things like that, but also having a really strong support network and talking is so important, and sharing problems. They say a problem shared is a problem halved. So that's, something that why stress is really, really important. As for me, I do see patients one-on-one, but I also have this integrative oncology course for breast cancer patients with a particular model for South Asians. And this is to support people through and beyond cancer. I know we've whizzed through everything today, but we want to talk about the research, and we want to have time for answering your questions too. So I'm going to stop sharing and pass over to Mansi, who is now going to share her presentation. Thank you. Shall I unmute you? Oh,
Yeah.
you brilliant.
Yeah. Can everyone see the slides?
No, do you want to press share screen?
Oh, yeah.
Should
Has that done it?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. So my name's Mansi, and I'm a research assistant for the Inclusive Prehab, or the iPrehab project. And our project is about improving access to services that help you prepare for cancer treatment. So things like being mentally and physically well, and eating well, as Toril was saying. And we want to invite you to join our project. So you can join our project by being a part of our public community group. And through this group, we really want to hear about your views and your experiences of cancer care. And we also want to hear about any feedback you may have on how we do our research. So there's no formal time commitment involved in this. And we are offering a £20 voucher for your time as well. If you would like to take part, or if you have any questions, or you want to hear, if you want any more information, please do get in touch with Nicola or Cheryl. They are our public involvement coordinators, and they'll be happy to answer any questions you have. If you would like to share these slides with someone in a different language, please do reach out. We are happy to translate these slides for you. Yeah, and that's about it for me. I'm sure you probably have a lot of questions for Toril, so I'm just going to stop here.
Thank you so much. I actually want to share a little bit more about the iPrehab project. The iPrehab project is a project which looks at prehabilitation. Prehabilitation means improving your life, your nutrition, and your lifestyle, including exercise. I'm sure I can see Nicola there. And that helps with cancer treatment, and to help you get through treatment and beyond, and to prepare your body for it. And what we realized for this research project, what Professor Jane Hopkinson is running it, is that there are certain groups that are less likely to have prehabilitation and to have the support to help them through their kind of diagnosis and treatment and surgery. And that's the ethnic minorities, people who are socioeconomically deprived, people with learning difficulties, and those who are digitally poor. And obviously I get that we're completely missing out digital because this is on Zoom, but all of these people have poor outcomes, and they don't get invited to do prehabilitation. So what we want to do is, knowing this information, we want to be able to offer this kind of information to anyone in these communities so they can be better prepared when they go through cancer treatment and surgery. So that's the really basis of it. And in the past, traditionally, ethnic minority communities, including South Asians, haven't joined research projects, and we want to make this more accessible. And I understand that part of it is that we're doing it in English today, so that, you know, but obviously if we want to do it in different languages, that's something we're looking into and something we're thinking about. And Mansi speaks a lot of languages and I speak a couple, but like the point is that we really want to share this information. So thank you so much for listening. Now we do have time for some questions. If you have questions, please pop them underneath in the YouTube or email us. I do work one-to-one with clients. We also have a course for breast cancer patients. It's a 13 module course, and we also have a special module for anyone that's from the South Asian community, because our diet and lifestyle needs are slightly different to the white population. So I do hope that you'll stay in touch, follow me on Instagram for more tips, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.